Well, hello again. Seems like a long time since I've said that. The reason being is it's been almost, what, a year and a half or more since I put up a video. I appreciate all the return subscribers to the video I put up the other day, the one about the drive-in movie. In the old days, that was kind of fun making that. It brought back a lot of memories for me, I'll tell you. The drive-in theater I had in our town, or we had in our town, you could take your car in there, or they had a place where you could just walk in, pay your money and walk and sit down next to the snack bar. They had these like long chairs. I forget what they called. They look like Adirondack chairs is what they look like, I think. And you could sit there with a speaker above your head. The only problem was all the bugs. You had to sit there constantly swat away mosquitoes and whatnot. Some of you have asked what's new since the last time I was here. Well, I'll cover a few of the things. First of all, you see we now have a Mr. Cool heat pump in the garage. It's 36,000 BTU, 4 zones. And the reason it's 4 zones is the 36,000 BTU comes that way. And I was going to get a 24,000. Where am I at here? My camera's so bright out here I can't even see where I'm at. I was going to get a 24,000 and Brendan said, no, you need the big one. You need the 36. You've got a large garage. I said, well, it's not that large. And I don't need to have it ice cold in there. All I need is, just something to temper the air. He said, get to 36. Well, I did, and it turns out I think he was probably right. But don't tell him. I don't want it to go to his head. By the way, this was installed by my grandson and I. We did it over a 2-day period. The first day, we put up all this and then all the dudding and everything. And then the next day, I ran the 220 line out, put the box in and all that stuff. So it didn't cost very much. But there's where we put the air handler. I guess it would be called an air handler. It's Mr. Cool. I said it didn't cost very much. What I was talking about was the electrical box and the wiring and the conduit and all that. So the actual Mr. Cool was $2,200. And you got your little remote control here. All I got to do is hit on and off and you'll see the little vents open up. There they go. And right now I got it set for, what is it, 74 degrees, I guess? Yeah, we're set up for 74 degrees. I used it all last summer, and boy, I'll tell you what, it really kept the garage cool. This is a very, very nice unit. For $2,200, it was well worth it. If I'd have had a central kind of a guy come down and install one outside and inside, set it all up, it would have been over $5,000. So this was less than half. And plus I got a 10% discount for having been a veteran in the United States military. I said, I'll take it, The next thing I had to do was to light up this garage a lot more. The back corner didn't get lit up because I really don't need it right now, but I can do that later. So I contacted the people who initially wired the garage and I said, hey, look, what I need is 4 light sockets added to the garage area. Just tap off into the existing wire and put a couple of lights over in this area here and around the back and all. And I also need you to run about a 20-foot 220 line for the air conditioner that I have installed. And so the guy comes out and he said, okay, let me look at it. He comes out and he looks around and he said, okay, let me see now, 4 sockets and a 220 line, about 20 feet long, $1,600. I said, $1,600? I said, no, that's not going to happen, buddy. Forget that. So I'm not paying you $1,600 to do that little bit. So he left. And I talked it over with Brendan, and Brendan said, well, you can do that, yeah, my cheerleader, you can do that. I said, Brendan, I don't want to mess with the 220 line. He said, oh, you can do it, we'll walk you through it. Blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, if I die, it's your fault, buddy. So anyway, the 220 line, I went ahead and ran it. And actually, it turned out better than I expected. I didn't think I was capable of doing that sort of thing, but I just tapped off the existing circuit breaker box and ran the line all the way up and then outside and down to the air conditioner. So that was an easy thing. I didn't think it was going to be that easy. So I was kind of proud of myself. First time I've ever done that. And then instead of putting sockets in here, I bought these lights off of it was Amazon, I think it was. They came in a couple of days and they're LED and they're real cheap. I really like them. And the best part about it is you can string these babies together. You can run a line, you can run them all the way around the shop if you want. If you look real closer, you see a plug-in. Each one will plug into another. And you can run those things, let me back up here a little bit. You can run those lights all the way around the garage if you want to, any room you got. You really light the place up and then run them over here. You can connect them all together. Kind of cool. So then I just bought some chain at Lowe's and strung them down from the ceiling. Each one has a pull chain on it. I did the entire job for around $390, maybe a little less. I'm making progress. I know it doesn't look like I did much. That's probably because I didn't. But you know, toward the end when wifey got sick, I couldn't come out here at all, hardly. I'd come out for an hour and I'd be worried the whole time I was out here whether or not she was still breathing. It was kind of hard, and so I just didn't get a chance to do much on the car. It basically sat stagnant for quite a while. Anyway, after she passed away, I was not in any mood to do it either. So a few more months skated by, and it took me a while to get motivated. You know what I mean? You know, we thought we had it all figured out, the wife and I. But, you know, you prepare for it, and, you know, in the eventuality of whichever one of us went first, I thought it would always be me. And as it turned out, it was unfortunately her. It's a kind of terrible change of events. I didn't expect that. So now I'm finally back in the swing of things, and I've only been back, say, a total of maybe 7 months. And you don't get a whole lot done, especially when the engine craps out on you. Now, prior to all of this happening, you know, the severe downturn on wifey's health, I did manage to get all the floorboards repaired. I welded in. I didn't buy actual floorboards. I went ahead and bought metal, 16 gauge, and went ahead and welded it all in, such as I could do. You know, my welding is so bad, it's terrible, it's atrocious. But I think I did it enough to where my feet won't go through. I use that 16 gauge stuff. It's pretty solid, and it's all been coated with the seam sealer, and I just slathered on a big, thick, heavy coat of Eastwood's rust encapsulator, which is not cheap stuff. But, you know, I wanted it. It's done there, and the ceiling has also been covered. I know you can't see it very well, but the entire ceiling's been derusted and covered in the encapsulator also. The problem was I never was able to get back into the interior. I was doing pretty good there for a while, and then the engine quit and all kinds of crap, smoking and all that jazz. I was just sitting here one day, you know, the engine was running perfectly, and all of a sudden I looked at the rear of the car and there was just smoke barreling out of that thing. I said, what is going on now? My gosh, look at here. So I contacted Brendan and I said, look at this. And I sent him a video. And I went back and I looked at the exhaust pipes. It was just blowing it out. And I said, oh, Jesus, how did this happen? How did this happen? You know, I went from being the engine really looking good, but it wasn't as good as it looks now. But I was happy with it. But then I was suddenly unhappy with it. You know, it idled great. I couldn't understand that. It idled fine. It just blew a lot of smoke out the back, and it was going through a lot of oil. So I thought it was, now initially, Brendan said, well, I think he might have a busted piston ring, and then I contacted Nick out in Colorado. He's the guy that has the Vintage Thunderbird Repair YouTube channel, and he thought the same thing. He said, you got a busted ring, John, because I bore scoped it, and there was some oil down in there quite a bit. Well, I just didn't, in the back of my mind, I just didn't think that's what it was. I thought it was a blown head gasket, because in Arkansas, you have to live in a southern state, I think, and understand how the mentality is, the good old boy mentality, especially from many, many years ago. You know, you throw a couple cases of beer at a few of these boys and give them a couple $100, and oh yeah, we'll rebuild your entire engine. That's the way it used to be. And they didn't have half the tools they needed, but they made it work. And the guy usually that was paying them and giving them the beer, he was happy. And this was one of these cases here. He was happy. So they went ahead, they put a short block in it, so because apparently the engine was shot completely. They put a short block in it, and then the old boys, you know, they cleaned up the head, they cleaned up the manifold best they could, and they just threw it back on there, and they did not use a torque wrench. They didn't have a torque wrench. Who needs a torque wrench, you know? Anyway, we'll just tighten her down. We'll just get a big old ratchet there, boy. We'll just crank her down. Well, what happened was, in my mind, that's what happened, and I think they didn't torque it well enough, and I probably had a blown head gasket. Well, that's what it turned out to be. Lucky me. So I searched around for a machine shop, and I decided I'm going to have both heads rebuilt. And searched around for a machine shop in town here. I didn't even know it existed. It's only like 4 or 5 miles from where I lived. And he's been there for years. I never knew it. He had no sign out front of his shop. And when I finally got to know him a little better, I said, why don't you put a sign out in front of your shop so you know this is a machine shop? He said, are you kidding? He said, I'm already behind. I don't need any more work. I said, okay. Anyway, when I first went in that place, I opened the door and there was like engine blocks and cylinder heads laying everywhere. And there were tables full of pistons and connecting rods and valves. And I said, you know, I am in the right place. So I went in and talked to him. I told him what I had. He was a talker. He wanted to have a long conversation. And I told him I got, you know, this 390, blah, blah, blah. He said, I'll bring the heads in. I'll take care of it. He said, I'll put hardened valve seats in the exhaust. He said, I'll check the spring tension. I'll boil it out. I'll grind the valve. I'll do everything that needs to be done. So I'm thinking, man, this guy's going to want some money. You know, this guy was one, you know, a lot of rebels. A lot of people consider rebels not to be so bright. You know, well, I got news for them. They're a lot smarter than they let on, okay? And that's the way they like it. And, but, you know, he looked at me and said, I'll tell you what, John. He said, I'll do both heads for $400 from top to bottom. I said, man, you got yourself a deal. Now, of course, like with all machine shop guys, you know, they're very few and far in between anymore, and they're usually overloaded, which this guy was with repair work. He was working by himself because he said he couldn't get anybody that would be interested enough to learn how to do it. He said, I'd teach him everything, but he said, he can't get anybody to do it. So he's 6 weeks went by. I didn't say anything, you know. I called him up one time and I said, how's it going? He said, oh, I got him in the boiling vat right now. I'll call you in a little while. Well, 6 weeks went by and I finally got a call one day. He said, come get him, and I did. And I put them all back in. My grandson James helped me. But in order to get the heads off, I had to remove the intake manifold on these big 390 engines, and those things weigh nearly, I think they're like 80 to 85 pounds. Well, I couldn't get that thing off of there. It was just too much, too heavy. Anyway, you know, not being able to lift those heads or lift the intake manifold was a real problem, so I had to put up some kind of a deal here. I ran it between the two joists, or the A-frames on the ceiling up here, and it was just two 2x8s with an entire tube of liquid nail between them, and then I bolted them together and I put a joist hanger on each, double joist hanger on each one with a secure board underneath. Good and secure, but you know, I didn't know how much weight it would hold, and I checked around on the internet and they said if you take a couple of these 2x8s and do that, and they say it's good for about 1,000 pounds. Well, I didn't trust that, so I checked with my son, who's a mechanical engineer, and I showed him what I did. I said, what do you think? I said, is that good enough to hold 1,000 pounds? He said, I don't think so, Dad. He said, there's a lot to be, you just can't go on the internet and have some guy tell you it'll hold 1,000 pounds. He said, but you got to deal with the type of wood, the wood grain, the quality of the wood, the span that you have to deal with, and he said, you know, the primary problem is up here in this area here, where it's not right here. You got that pretty secure, but he said up in here, you know, how secure is this stuff up here, pulling down on each end. And what I did here was I also put aluminum strapping along the top edge of double aluminum strapping along the top. So when I put a chain here and I hook my chain hoist, that it doesn't dig into the wood. Anyway, he said, you know, there's formulas. I said, John, please, look. John. I said, John, I'm a plain old boy daddy. I said, give me a number. How much do you think it'll hold? But he got back to me a day later. He said, I figured it all out. He said, to be safe so you don't get killed. He said, I wouldn't put much more than 425 pounds on that thing. 425 pounds, which means to me 475 can handle it. And that is more than a 390 engine weighs, okay? So I need to get some stickers on there that kind of gives an idea. I'll put 425 as the weight limit for that. And he said, but I just want you to be safe. And I know what he did. He lowballed me. He probably would have held 560 pounds, but you know, he wanted to make sure his old dad was safe. All right, what else? Oh yeah. Once the engine got fixed, it was running fine. And this took quite a bit of time. You know, this wasn't something that just I did overnight. It took a couple of weeks, you know, to get this all done, because I could only work on it from time to time. I just didn't have the energy and the drive. I didn't really think wifey's passing would affect me like that, you know, because to me, and to her too, dying is part of living. Always has been. We talked about that a lot. Dying is part of living. You know, it's just one of those things you accept. You don't even think about it. You just accept it. You plan for it, and that's what we did. Everything was paid for. Our funerals, we had our cemetery plots bought, everything taken care of. No financial burden on the kids whatsoever. Anyway, as soon as all that got done, and then my power steering pump went out. Started leaking crap everywhere. Brenda said, well, what you need to do is rebuild it. No. I'm sick of rebuilding junk. You know, we're not going to do that. I got Bird Nest sells a reproduction. Am I on the microphone here or not? Okay. Bird Nest sells a reproduction of one of these, and I went ahead and bought it. And the flywheel that goes on it, the pulley that goes on it, you also, if you want, you cannot use, I could not use the old pulley on the new reproduction power steering pump, even though it was supposedly the same size hole in the middle. Well, I couldn't do it, so I had to go back. I worked with Fred up there at Bird Nest. He's a good feller. I sent him a video, and he said, I don't understand that, because I could take this pulley, and the old pulley, I could just slide on, off, no problem at all. It's supposed to be pressed on. It took me a long time to get the newer one on, so he sold me, I said, well, look, just give me the reproduction pulley. I'll try that. It worked great. Pressed it on nice and tight. But man, what a mess I had with that. I did it on the car. If this had been outside, if the engine had been outside the car, it would have been a piece of cake, but it wasn't. One other thing, I initially put this line on the outside where it hooks in down. It hooks down there at the bottom where it screws into the back of the power steering pump. I had it coming up here, coming across, and going around this way. I also replaced this hose too. The other one was crappy. It was functional, but it was crappy. Anyway, once I got all that done, everything was, and I said, man, that looks great. I looked at an engine on YouTube that had been rebuilt, and I said, oh no, I don't believe it. I had to take this off of here, move it around to the other side, and put it here. Now this is supposed to be further down. They had theirs all the way down to where it was covering up the bolts on the valve cover. I didn't like that. What am I supposed to do? Just move that hose out of the way and possibly break this line every time or someone in the future wants to take off the valve cover? I said, no, that's not going to happen. So I just bent it down partially. I got to get this back on too. My goodness sakes, I didn't do that. All right, now. I also bought a new set of reproduction spark plug wires. For those of you who don't know, these things are numbered. The wires themselves are numbered. Here's number 6, number 7. Get a little close up here if I can help you. I don't know if I can help you at all. But those wires are all numbered. So they're cut the right size. Everything. You don't have a foot and a half of extra wire. They're a little bit pricey, but so what? It's not like I got to buy them every week. Just got to save up your nickels and dimes, you know, that's all. Well, once I got all that done, everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, the carburetor craps out. I started the engine, and it just started racing like crazy. I was up to like 3,000 RPM. I said, what's going on? I had to quick shut the engine off. Something was wrong with the carburetor. Let me go to the other side. Now, this is a Franken carburetor. What we mean by that is it's parts from different carburetors put together to make one. And I don't know what year the bottom is compared to the top. I have no idea. But we got it working, and it works fine. I put electric choke on it, for those of you who don't know. Well, behind the electric choke is the fast idle cam, and behind the fast idle cam is one of these deals. It's a lever that has the fast idle adjustment screw on it, and where it attaches to the carburetor had broken. Oh, look, guys, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. You buy yourself an old car, you better be prepared for this sort of thing, and if you get frustrated, you're in the wrong hobby. You just got to blow it off and laugh at it. I mean, what next? You know, but what that does is it teaches you more and more and more about your car. More and more, okay? I never would have known how to remove and install the power steering pump on this car had it not crapped out. Now I know exactly how to do it. All right, so that's what it's all about. And then after I got everything all squared away, Brendan and I determined that the dash pot on the other side of the carburetor is probably bad. And here it is right here, and you can see it's just not, it's supposed to go further in, but it's just not working. It only goes part of the way in. It's all dried up in there, no doubt about it. And so it's been around. It's one of those things that's been around for 60 years. So I ordered another one from Mike's Carburetors, up in, seems to me he's from somewhere around Seattle, Washington. It'll be here in a couple of days. We'll put that in there. Also, I decided that I needed to order a bracket. Now this is something I think is pretty important. Let me shut the camera off and get a pointer. The old bracket that held the dash pot was taller than this one. I ordered this new one. I noticed there was a big difference in the size. It was way up in the air like this, whereas this one was lower. So what was happening was, see this angle between here and here? That's where the dash pot screws in. Here and here and here and here. Same angle where the throttle hits, but the other one was higher up in the air. So it was hitting at kind of almost a downward angle. So I said, that's not right. So I went ahead and ordered another bracket. I've got it in. And then, of course, we ordered the dash pods. It'll be in shortly. And when we get that in, we'll have a nice, should have a perfect angle to get that thing to be functioning better. Hopefully it'll be in sometime this week. Probably, today's what, Monday? Probably be in by, I would say, Thursday or Friday. And here's all my parts waiting to go back on the car. They're all clean, painted, and all that stuff. I showed you this a long time ago. And since the time I stopped making videos, or stopped uploading them, I have a new shift handle and a new signal light handle. And oh yeah, one more thing. God, it's just one thing after another. For some reason, the signal lights, the dot 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 dot, stopped working. Everything else is working, but the signal lights stopped working. So what is going on? I spent all that time working on these things. Brake lights work, backup lights work, and headlights work, and the turn signal lights at the front work. I mean, they light up, but they don't flash. So I went ahead and I bought. I had bought this before. You all knew about that. I bought this box here. Or my son got it for me for Christmas. I can't remember which, but I hooked this up to take the place of the old mechanical mess that I did not want to begin with. But it was fun fixing it and showing everybody how it works. In previous videos, if you've not seen it. Anyway, I plugged it up and it still didn't work, so I have no signal lights right now. So that's something else I got to work on. Isn't that incredible? It's one thing after another. There's one other thing too. I'll tell you what, with failure after failure on these cars, had this car been taken care of, I wouldn't have had to go through all this mess. But like I said, I wouldn't be learning about it either. So it's been fun. It's a hobby car. It's a hobby car. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't make any more of it. There's one guy, he has a YouTube video series where he paints cars. And at the end he says, hey guys, it's only paint. Don't overthink it. That's the way it is with these engines and with this car. It's just an old car. Don't overthink it and don't get frustrated. Forget it. Just laugh it off, Everything's funny in these cars. Something breaks, it's like, oh, yeah, a little frustrating at first, but then you go, well, what the heck, What did I expect when I bought a car that was 60 years old? Did I expect that thing to run like new? One other thing, down on the transmission, there's a half moon gizmo. It looks like this. And there's 4 wires coming out of it. Now that thing attaches to the side of your transmission. It's called a neutral safety switch. It'll be in your shop manual. By the way, speaking of shop manuals, the whole time I was gone, I kept getting contacts from people about simple things on their Thunderbirds, whereas if they had purchased a shop manual, they would have known the answer. Look guys, if you haven't got enough money to buy a shop manual used on eBay, then you got no business working on these cars. Get a used one. It doesn't have to be a new one. If it's got greasy pages, so what? As long as they can be read. If they're dog-eared, so what? As long as all the pages are there and they can be read and the illustrations are clear enough to work with, get one. It doesn't have to be new. All right, and you can get them cheap, like $20-some if you buy a used one. What kills you is the stupid shipping, but so what? Anyway, those 4 wires come up and they connect to a weird looking connector right here, right there. And that's not the connector. The connector that they connect to is probably going to be worn out. Well, if it is, cut the wires and go on eBay and buy yourself a 4-wire connector set like this and put those in, which is what I did. I spliced the wires on left and right because they come with the wires and everything. It's a nice, it's waterproof. And then I bought these. I had to change out these things here. The ones I originally used were falling apart already with the heat of the engine. These I got from Bird Nest. They're designed for this usage. I taped it together on both sides and ran it, and bingo, my car would start. Prior to that, it didn't start. I contacted Brendan. I said, my car won't start. He said, it's probably your neutral safety switch. And I said, yeah, of course, you know, anything I touch is broken on this car. So, but 2 of the wires go to the neutral safety switch. But what about the other 2 wires that come off that neutral safety switch and go up here through this connector? What about those 2 wires? Well, guess what? They're your backup lights. When you put your car, you have to have backup lights connected to your reverse. Your neutral safety switch only enables the car to only start when it can't go forward. It started out to be in neutral, and then it switched over to park. But at the same time, when you shift your transmission into reverse, that's when that neutral safety switch activates the reverse lights. And the reason for that is, one, it lights up, you know, the area you're going to back up. But if it's during the day, it alerts people maybe behind you that, oh, this guy's got his backup lights on, he must be going to back up. Otherwise, they would get run over and not knowing you're coming back. And so that's twofold purposes. As far as safety goes. Keep that in mind, okay? 2 wires for the neutral safety switch to start the car, and 2 wires to the backup lights. Go through there. Now for my great-great-grandmother. Her name was Antoinette Elizabetha Wipken. W-U-E-B-K-E-N. She came from Prussia. And in around 1847, came alone, 30 years old, across the Atlantic on one of those rickety old wooden bark ships, and wound up in New York State, where she married my great-great-grandfather. But when she died, now my great-great-grandfather passed away 5 years before she did, but her son, who was a tombstone maker for all of his life, never gave his mother a tombstone. I couldn't believe that. Maybe they didn't get along. I don't know. He gave one for his dad, but not one for her. Well, you wanted to know what I've been doing, you know, during the time I was gone. And right here, you can see wifey. This was in 1982. We're at a cemetery here in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, Wayne County. Nice, quaint little town. I love it. If it wasn't so expensive up there, I probably would have settled in that little town. It's just outrageous as far as expense goes. St. John's Lutheran Cemetery goes back into the 1800s and even before that. This is the cemetery stone of my, the gravestone of my, I don't know what they call those things, loving cup on the top. This is my great-great-grandpa, who was married to my great-great-grandma, and she's buried right here. Right here, wifey is pointing to just a metal slab they put in the ground. Somebody put it in there to mark that there's a person buried there, and it turns out to be my great-great-grandma. That's all she got. Now look at the difference between... He died in 1898. I'm sorry, 1893. She died 5 years later in 1898. Now look at the difference here. This to this. I don't understand what that's all about. But anyway... while I was gone off of YouTube, I had to remedy this situation. So last month, up in that same cemetery in Honesdale, my great-great-grandmother, after 125 years, finally got her grave marker. I know she's happy. And I'll tell you something else. I've had a pretty easy life, and I didn't have to do a whole lot of things to make it that way. I think she and maybe another woman were responsible for all of it. They've been looking over my shoulder since the day I was born. A couple more minor items to show you, then we'll head to the house. When I put the exhaust manifolds back on the car, I painted them with this Rust-Oleum high heat up to 2,000 degrees. Then, well, first I primed it. I primed it with the primer, good from 1,300 to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I went ahead and I primed it with this here. And then I went ahead and I put satin clear on it, which is also good up to 2,000 degrees. Why did I do that? It's overkill. I love overkill. If you don't know that, you haven't been watching my videos for very long. It looked real nice when I got done, and the paint's not going to be chipping off every time I turn around. Alright, the last thing I'm going to cover out here is after I got all this stuff done, everything's taken care of, everything's changed, everything's done. I jumped in the car a couple days ago. No, yesterday. I jumped in the car yesterday. I was going to start the car without the dash pot. I put this spring back on. I had it removed, and this did not come with the car. I put this on here because a lot of the old cars had a forward spring that would pull back the throttle and keep the RPMs down. This one didn't have it, so I made one, stretched it out, and put it on. Jumped in the car, turned the key, nothing happened. After all this crap, nothing happened. Wouldn't start. So I contacted Brendan. My car won't start. Well, I came out, measured the voltage in the battery, 7.3 volts. Now, how did that happen? Well, it could be because I bought the battery in 2018. So, anyway, I put it on charge with my battery charger for 2 days on trickle. It's now up to 13.7. So, the question is, do I want to start the car without the dash pot? Why not? I'm all for it. Are you all for it? I'll tell you what, let's do it. Let's start the old Thunderbird and see what she sounds like. And hopefully the RPMs won't go wild because I have this spring on here holding the throttle that way. There's no dash pot, remember. So if I turn it on and shut it off in a hurry, you'll know why. It went too high. Now, it could be that the reason the battery went down to 7 volts or whatever it was, 6 or 7 volts, is because every time I started the car, you know, to tune the engine and check this out and check that out, could be I'm running strictly off battery voltage because the alternator has given up the ghost. I thought about that last night while I was on the computer reading comments from people. So if that's the case, I'm going to have to get the alternator out of there, and if I have to, I'll buy another new one. Now, of course, Brendan, he'd always, well, why don't you rebuild it, John? The answer is no, Brendan. I'm tired of rebuilding junk. We're going to get new stuff. Yep. Let me see if I can get this stupid key in this key switch. I'll be okay. All right, let's see if it's even going to start. Here we go. There we go. She's idling real good. Look at there. I like that. It's actually idling a little low right now. It should be up around 1,500, but I'm not going to worry about it for now. I'm just going to go ahead and let her idle. I'm going to let that choke plate open up. Now that choke plate will take about 5 minutes to open up, which is normal, between 4 and 5 minutes. Once that does, then I can go ahead and hit the throttle a little bit and the idle will go down even further. It's supposed to go down to about 750, and once you put it in gear, then it drops down to about 450, so you don't tear your transmission up when you put it in gear. Alright, she crawled back up a little bit on her own right there. It's getting there. Alright, let's find out if the alternator is working. I got the positive probe right there in the positive battery. We started out with 13. If we're above 13, that means the alternator is working. Oh yeah, she's working good. Almost 15 volt, well, 14 and a half. Listen to that baby purr, huh? Rebuild heads. make a big difference. It's never run this smoothly. It's got a great sound to it. Old Radio Al, one of my very first subscribers up there in Missouri, he says he bought an El Camino. What did I say that was? An El Camino. Yeah, it's an El Camino, but this is what you're looking for, Al. Alright, I think we got her now. Boy, I'll tell you what, I am really happy with this motor now. You know, anybody want to take bets on what will break next? We could like get a, you know, a Thunderbird pool. You know, who will think that the alternator will go out? You know, who will think that the tire will go flat? You know. Oh my gosh, it's nothing but fun with these cars if you have the right attitude. I got a question from one of our subscribers. He wanted to know, he said when I stopped my Thunderbird videos, it was during the time I was doing the exhaust. He's right, he wanted to know how I put my exhaust up. I think the best way to approach this is starting with a video that was put up by Nick Pepe, who is the vintage Thunderbird repair channel guru when it comes to T-Birds, okay? And when he, you know, quite a while ago, what was this? This would be 3 years ago. He put this video up. He was working on a 60, well, I can't remember what year it was, but the exhaust applies to the 64, 65, and 66 Thunderbirds. And he had just put this one up on his Thelma and Louise car. It was that turquoise convertible. And he mentioned that today's exhausts that you buy, you know, commercially through a vendor or whatever are, from what I gather, they're all made by the same company. So no matter who you order from, you're still going to get the same one. It's just a matter of a difference in price, I would assume. And he said, you know, you could see that this thing is at an angle once it's installed. They're all like that, he said. Now this one wasn't too bad on his Thelma and Louise car, so he just left it. But he said some of them are pretty pronounced, like so. Well, that's the way mine was on Perline. And I could not live with that. I wanted it fixed. I didn't want to run around with one exhaust higher than the other. Here's the way I did my exhaust. My exhaust was, I mean, it was angled down this way, I believe it was, really far. I mean, it was disgusting. I said, man, I can't leave that like that, you know. Every time I go over a bump, I'd worry about the one side pipe hitting the ground. So if it had been just a little bit, I'd have been okay. But it was just too much of an angle. And as Nick said in his video, he said they're all like that because they're all made by the same people, even though they're sold by different companies. Probably some Chinese outfit somewhere, I don't know. Anyway, what I did was I cut the H pipe out. I got rid of this, which enabled me to shove this one up where it was a lot more level to this. Matter of fact, I think I could probably still go a little bit more. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm off by about, looks like about half an inch, 3/4 of an inch maybe, I don't know. It's probably from when I was messing with the heads, you know, manifold and everything, taking it on, putting it off and everything. I'll take a look at that. But anyway, after I cut out this H section, then it won't make any difference. People say, oh, you shouldn't do that. Why not? It's my car. I can do what I want. And that, if you're not going to do high RPMs, you're not going to put it on a racetrack, you're not going to do drag racing and stuff like that, don't worry about that pipe going across. If you're just going to drive it around town like a normal, you know, intelligent human being, you won't have to worry about that, okay? But if you're on the highway doing 90 miles an hour, yeah, it might be better to take off and put that pipe back. Now I covered those holes up. After I cut the pipe, I ground the holes away, down flush. There was a flange, you know, I couldn't cut it directly flat with the pipe. I had to leave a little bit there and then grind it down to where it was, you know, flush with the pipe. And then, let me get some clarity here, a little blurry. Anyway, then I ordered these sleeves. These are stainless steel sleeves, stainless steel exhaust sleeves I ordered on eBay. These are 4 inches long. Cheap, real cheap. I think it was $17, $18 for the pair. So, and the best part about it is, if the next guy, you know, who gets his car, he comes under here and he says, oh, what idiot cut that pipe out of there. I don't like that. So he can just go ahead and weld the pipe right back in again if he wants. Okay, I could have done the same thing, but I'm such a terrible welder, there's no way that would have worked for me. So, you know, it doesn't hurt anything to do that. You can always put it back. Hopefully that helps the guy that wanted to know how I did my exhaust. Oh yeah, one other thing on the exhaust. If you think you're going to get away with running this driver's side pipe up over here like this and down and around and clear it from the shock and over the top of the axle, if you think you're going to get that all the way down to the muffler, wrong answer. Nick from Vintage Thunderbird Repair will tell you that. My grandson and I had to go up here. It was up here. No, it was over here. We had to go over here, heat that thing from both sides with MAP gas. He held the tank on one side, I held my tank on the other till it was glowing red. Then I stuck a metal bar in there. I think it was a breaker bar. And then we pulled that thing. Let me get my hand right here. We pulled that thing that way. Okay. In other words, we opened it up in the joint. We may have had to do it up here too. I can't remember. You got to play with it. Nick admitted that in his video. He said, you know, you got to heat them up. It's just not going to work any other way. Well, last but not least is my 2011 Chrysler 200 convertible. It's the new car on the block. I just don't have enough cars, you know. I mean, one guy's got to have 4 vehicles minimum, okay? Who was it? Will Rogers said the United States is the only planet on the, or the only country in the planet that you can go to a poor farm in a car. he was right. Anyway, my son gave me this. His girlfriend, he was dating at the time, she was driving it, and it belonged to her mother. Her mother had passed away. She had driven it for a couple more years after that, and she decided she wanted another car. This was her mother's dream car. Convertible, Chrysler. She wanted one. She got it. It's in perfect condition. Absolutely perfect condition. And so my son said, well, she was going to trade it in. My son said, no, don't do that. They won't give you any money. You know, car dealers, all they do is rip you off. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll buy it from you. That way you'll have some cash money to go down there with. So he did. She did. She went down and got herself a new car. And then he hung on it for a while, and he knew I wanted a convertible. I think we need to take a collection to buy that guy some mufflers. Anyway, he called me up one day. He says, you want this car? You want this convertible, right? I said, yeah, I want it. I'll take it. I said, how much you want for it? He said, I don't know. I'll get back with you. Well, 3 more months went by, and I didn't hear anything. I figured he didn't want to sell it after all. He finally contacted me. He said, okay, it's yours, Dad. I said, okay, how much you want? I'll send you the money. He said, no, it's free. I said, free? Yeah, just take it. He says, I got 6 cars. I got no place to park it. 6 cars. He's a widower too. This is amazing. So I said, well, see, so what this boils down to, you got to understand how this works in our family. I'm just hanging on this car for him. I'm getting it out of his driveway. So because when I croak, you know, he's going to get it back. So he's not so dumb. You know, I raised a pretty smart boy. So anyway, that's it for now, guys. Hopefully I've answered all your questions of maybe a little bit more than I should have. As what's been going on? Well, now you know what's been going on. And I probably missed a few items. And for those of you who remember our youngest grandson entering college, I did a YouTube video where he was out with his blue Challenger getting ready to go down to the school and pay his fees to start his freshman year. Well, he's completed his senior year, and this is him getting his degree. That was a pretty big moment for him. While he was in college, he did a couple of kickboxing fights, and he won, and he was also the fraternity president of the Sigma, they call it SIG-EP, Sigma Phi Epsilon, I guess it is. I think I took you through a tour in one of my videos of the frat house, so he was president of that. It turned out real good. His next stop is Dallas, Texas. He was going to go to Logan University up in, where is it, up in St. Louis, to be a chiropractor. But in the end, he decided it was just too much crime up there, so he opted not to go to Logan. He switched to Parker University down in Dallas, Texas. So that's where he's going to be going in the fall. He's already been accepted. He's good to go. When he graduates, he'll be taking over his mother's sister's chiropractic business. She's going to give him the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel. No charge. It's all yours. I'm retiring. You got it all, son. She's going to work with him for about a year and then hand it over. She's not going to just do it cold, you know. But he's got a 3-year stint now to go through down in Dallas. And he graduated from UCA. The family all pitched in and helped him out. He is debt-free. And when he gets out of chiropractic school, he'll be debt-free again. And then he'll walk into a ready-made business. I mean, some kids just have it all made, you know. But his grades were very good. He did a great job in college. We're all proud of him. We all want him to be totally, utterly, 1,000,000% successful. You see, the family gets behind the kids in the family. The rest of the family helps out. There's no limit to what can be accomplished. One more thing I wanted to cover. A couple of weeks ago, 2 of our subscribers from Michigan, George H. and his wife Carol B., came to visit. It was real nice of them. They were sweeping down from Michigan down through into Tennessee to visit some folks. They swept by here, spent a couple of days here in Arkansas. They were towing their camper, and they went to Mount Pettigene, where the car show videos I always do, or used to do, are done up there. They got a beautiful campground up there for people that want to, you know, if you really want to see the beauty of Arkansas, that's one of the places you need to camp out. But, you know, they came by and we spent a couple of days going out to supper together. We talked, had a great time. It was wonderful of them to do that, and I greatly appreciated it. So I wanted to do a shout out to George and Carol. Oh, last item, I have not renewed the garden. I'm going to till these up, I hope. If the temperature is very hot in Arkansas already, I'm going to till these up, rake them out, use the dirt somewhere else. I was going to get to that last year, and I didn't do it. But our horseradish is still going strong. Brother Johnston gave me that up in Dayton, Ohio, if you remember from the old videos I did. Anyway, until next time, this is John.